Shabbat Shalom. This week's Parsha, we meet Moshe Rabbeinu, the greatest prophet ever, the future leader of the Jewish people. And in this week's Parsha, even before Moshe has his first revelation, he shows to us his leadership qualities and the courage that are needed for someone to take on the mission that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will impose on him. He sees an Egyptian hitting a Jew, and when no one else will come to the Jew's help, he kills the Egyptian. And then when he flees to Midian, and he sees that the shepherds, these bully shepherd boys, chase away the daughters of Yitro from the well, he rescues them and helps them water their sheep. But unfortunately, we also see it in these early episodes that precede the Exodus, some of the less praiseworthy features of the Jewish people that have haunted us through the ages and down to this day. When the day after Moshe saves a Jew by killing the Egyptian who's striking him, he sees two Jews fighting, and the Midrash tells us that the Rasha, the man who was raising his hand to hit the other one, was actually the same person that Moshe had saved the day before. And when Moshe asks him, why are you hitting this other person? This man answers, who chose you? Who elected you? Who appointed you? Mi samcha kasar shofet. Are you going to kill me like you killed the Egyptian? Moshe heard this, he was stunned. And he said, Achein noda davar. The matter is known. The Midrash tells us what matter was known. The Midrash tells us that the matter that was known was that Moshe was been wondering all along how it is that, for what reason, God had chosen to put the Jews in such dire straits with this terrible slavery and oppression. What did they do to deserve it? And when he saw this traitor, this Moysrim, this informer, who had just been saved the day before, and now telling Moshe, I'm going to, rat on you. I'm going to go tell the authorities what you did. He said, Achei noda davar. Now I understand what bad qualities there are among some Jews, even if a small minority, that justify the slavery and oppression that we're suffering now. So naturally, this incident of a Jew threatening to inform on Moshe to the authorities, and we know eventually someone did inform, and Paro sent out and wanted to kill Moshe, has troubled Jewish thinkers and Meforshim over the generations. Rabbi Avram Sabah, lived in the end of the 15th century, suffered himself the two exiles from Spain. He was in 1492 among those who were thrown out of Spain. But like many others, he thought, very naively as it seems now, that they would find a haven in Portugal, but 4 years later they were kicked out of Portugal. And along the way, with all the troubles that they suffered, there were, people willing to inform on Jews who were secretly praying and whatnot. So he says that he just can't believe that this was a Jew who would inform on Moshe, because the Torah says that when Moshe killed the Egyptian, B'neu Bachol, he buried him in the sand. And the Midrash tells us, what is a sand? Because it's like sand, doesn't make any noise. It insulates against noise and against sound. So also Moshe could confide among the Jews, his brethren, and they would not tell anyone else. But here, it turned to be not to be correct. Someone was willing to inform of. Avram Saba says he just couldn't have been Jewish, but Torah tells us he was. The Ralbag gives us an explanation that it had to do with the length of the exile. The longer the Jews stayed in Egypt and were subject to this to the brutality and oppression and slavery, the more their moral character degenerated, and then eventually they turned out people like this informer, this Moysrim, who was willing to rat on Moshe to Pharaoh. But this seems to be almost like a chicken and egg explanation, because if the exile is prolonged, we don't deserve the Geula because we have people who have such degenerate character. Well, but the exile itself is the cause of this character, because it's the exile that wears down on the moral character and code that Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov tried to instill in us. So this is a very difficult question, but something that has to be faced up to. Well, by the 19th century, we had gone through many, many episodes of persecution, and along with that, had suffered at the hands of many Moysrim, many informers, many Jews who were willing, for whatever reason, whether it's a pecuniary gain or just jealousy and self-hate, to snitch on other Jews to the authorities. And so by this time, Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch could speak of this as an outstanding and ingrained feature of Jewish history. I'll just read you a few words from what he had to say. This is my English translated from the Hebrew, translated from some very lyrical German, but it should be comprehensible. He says, this utterance, what the Jew yelled at Moshe, who appointed you, who asked you to intervene, who made you our leader and our judge, reveals at the very beginning of our existence as a nation a trait which characterizes us to this very day, and which is the source of all our defects. He goes on to say, this person, he didn't have the courage to stand up to the Egyptian who was hitting him, but Moshe Rabbeinu, just scolding him, didn't touch him, just scolded at him, why are you hitting the fellow Jew? Oh, now he's a brave guy, and he can yell at him and threaten to tell the authorities. This is the type of cowardice that we see in informers, and people are so brave when it comes to, ratting on and maligning and slandering Israel, the Jews, to all sorts of international bodies. So now Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, like so many Jewish leaders, can't really, Rabbi Avram Saba in a different way, can't really fully accept that this is such a bad character trait is something ingrained in the Jewish people. So he says, well, but maybe in the end this is a good character trait in that Jews are not submissive to human authority. They won't bow or kowtow to human leaders. We only submit to God. But just at the beginning of his discussion, he said, well, but he didn't have the courage to resist the Egyptian. So he's not really quite consistent here. And I think he's just in the quandary that we all find ourselves dealing with this type of thing, with Jewish self-hate in general, or the phenomenon of Moysrim or informers. But it's clearly something that we have to face up to, and not just pray, but do things to bravely say what a despicable and criminal act it is to inform on Jews to other authorities. And along with what we do, we always pray for delivery and the Gula Shlema. Thank you.